Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz. Today we're going to make a fun fold card. I'm calling it a triple flap fun fold. And each of these balloons or sets of balloons kind of opens up and you can write your message sort of hidden behind there. I'm using a die set from Trinity Stamps. The version I have is called Bunch of Balloons. They don't carry this anymore. They sort of upgraded it. They have one called Celebration Balloons that has those dies and then also like a heart balloon and a squiggly balloon. And then I also have two pieces of cardstock that are 4 inches by 8.5 inches. So we're making a slimline card, a full slimline. It will fit in a standard business envelope, you know, the kind your bills come in. So I am just ink blending for my balloons. I'm going around the edges to add a little bit of depth, and then I'll spend some extra time down at the bottom of the balloon. That's where it would be the darkest. And so this one I think is Sunbeam ink. From Simon Says Stamp, but then I didn't feel like that was quite dark enough. So this is Snapdragon from Altenew, and it is the yellowest of my oranges, and I'm not trying to turn it orange. I'm just trying to add a little like depth of color. So I'm going around the edges, and here I'm using these are from Trinity Stamps, the blending buddies. I have lots of different blending tools. I've got some foam ones. I have brushes of all shapes and sizes and brands and whatever, you know, with the handle on them. But I don't like the way I have to apply pressure with the brushes that have a handle. I feel like I'm sort of trying to grab on to the head of the brush or use pressure with my thumb. It's just not real comfortable. And a lot of them have a seam right along the side that it kind of hurts my hands over time. So I adore these blending buddies from Trinity Stamps. They're not inexpensive. I will link them a couple of places, but keep an eye out. I got mine on Black Friday or around Black Friday for half price. And so I think these are worth it, right? If you have a tool that you're going to use all the time, that's an investment. And for me, this was a really good one. So here I'm coming in with my largest balloon, which then has the most area that needs to be blended, but also this blue ink, I'm using Cadette from Simon Says Stamp. This is potent, so I'm having to be really, really careful and use a gentle hand. That is not something, I'm not a delicate crafter. And so I feel like I have more control with these blending buddies. It works really well. Here on this green one, this balloon is so small. This is actually the most challenging for me. So I've got a place where the ink looks a little heavy. So I'm just taking my heat gun to see how that's going to dry back. They soften as they dry, and actually that looks pretty good. And then I'm using a tiny little clipboard. It's from Tim Holtz, but whatever, like you use any clipboard, and it keeps it from warping. It's been really, really great. It was sort of an accident that I found that. So yeah, I would highly recommend it. It also keeps me from burning my hands. Now I'm just arranging my 3 largest balloons in particular on my panel, and I'm marking with a pencil where I want to fold them. So they're going to wrap around this purple piece of cardstock. And when I take them to my scoreboard, the pink one and the yellow one are 3/8 of an inch. I didn't measure it on purpose, but I'm just kind of noticing. And then the blue one was a 1/4 inch. And so we're going to come back to that blue one. The 1/4 inch is actually not enough. I probably could have just gone straight to my scoreboard and gone 3/8, but you know. The yellow one was harder for me to line up just because it's all the way on the right. So I can't just count the number of grooves that I've moved. So I'm using a ruler just to make sure that my pencil lines are in the same groove. Then I'll go through and I will erase my little pencil tick marks on all of these, and we'll start wrapping them around the back. So I am using a bone folder to get a really good crease. I don't want the balloons popping up too much. So I'm also not going to tuck this super tightly against the card. You can see I'm like, nope, that is not enough. Worth noting, the largest balloon in this set and in the new version of the set is very slightly larger than an A2. You could make a balloon shaped card out of this super easily. It still fits in an A2 envelope. It's not a whole lot bigger, but it's a little bigger. And so I am just scoring this on the new one because there were two score lines right next to each other. I tucked my ruler right up in that score line to make sure that I was getting a good crease. And now I'm going to add glue very carefully to the back. I'm going just kind of around the outer part of that cardstock. I do not want it to sort of leak into the crease. You will glue your card shut. Ask me how I know. Do you ever have those days when you're crafting and it's like, you know what card you're working on, it shouldn't be that hard, and it takes you a million years. I made this card 3 times, you guys. The first time I glued it shut. The second time I put, we're going to stamp and emboss on one of these balloons, and I had already glued it onto the card, and I totally mucked up the stamping, you guys. It was the first day of class. I made this yesterday. It was the first day of class. We work on a quarter system. And so I was teaching and I was meeting new students, and I got home and I was like, I can make a video. Oh. Anyway, I really like how it turned out. I hope you enjoy this card too. So I am just wrapping all 3 balloons around this purple panel, and I'm checking, right? I'm always flipping the card back over, lifting the balloon up, making sure I don't have any glue that oozed around the side. And then I'm figuring out the placement for my other 2 balloons. So I have used all 5 balloons in this nesting set. And I am just holding that green balloon kind of right into place while I add my glue to make sure I don't move it. At this point, I'm like paranoid that I'm going to mess something up, but it works out okay. So now I have, this is a stamp set from Spellbinders. It's called It's Party Time. And it came out with a release of theirs that had tons of balloons and stuff. And so I just thought it was perfect for this. I'm going to white heat emboss this on our orange balloon. So part of why I heat set the orange one was to make sure that all of that ink we had blended was super dry. Otherwise, the embossing powder will stick to it, and I didn't want that. So I checked it actually. I put some embossing powder on it just to make sure it was dry, and it all came off pretty easily. And because I'm using white, and especially the word "you" has some pretty thick letters, I'm using white pigment ink. This is Hero Arts Unicorn White Pigment Ink, just in case it doesn't emboss 100%. Like sometimes there's little holes in there. And so if I use white ink instead of clear embossing ink, you can't tell as much. So I am going to scoop my white embossing powder on there and flick that off. And actually this turned out perfectly. Like this was towards the end of 2 hours of crafting. And I was like, okay, here we go. We're getting back to normal. And I just stuck it right back on my clipboard, and see how well that turned out. Even the places where maybe the embossing powder was a little thin, or maybe there was a little gap, you can't hardly tell. Also worth noting, I have several Hero Arts Unicorn White pads. That was number 3. I like label them on the back, and it's a little dry. I like it like that. I didn't want that white ink to squish down into the letters, and then you get this sort of halo around them. So I actually stamped that 5 times before I embossed it, and I was just going very, very lightly. So that worked out pretty well. I had a spare orange balloon because I had stamped it badly before. So I added it to the back of this one just to strengthen it. The piece on the bottom of the balloon where you would have your string tied around it was feeling a little flimsy. So I added that, and then I glued it to the pink balloon just to layer this up. And now I have my 3 flaps, right? The front of my card is looking pretty good. So I wanted just a 1-layer card. So this is just another piece of 4 by 8.5. And I want to shellac this on there, and I kind of want to strengthen that purple cardstock. So I'm using my Beacon 3-in-1 because I can put a ton of glue on there, and because it is solvent based and not water based, it won't make my paper wet. It won't warp it. But you could just glue this onto like a regular card base, and then it would stand up on display. I was not worried about that. But this is our card. It's just a fun, cheerful, bright, happy birthday card with a bunch of flaps. You could do this with circles. You could do this with squares. I hope you like this. If you do, let me know in the comments below. Give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe so you will know the next time I have a video for you. And I will see you next time.